Good, we're set.
And if you want to go ahead and take it over, introduce yourself a little bit more and start talking to our people.
All right. Well, I want to welcome you all here. I'm Bart Loser, and I used to be on the board of the Chamber, and I've been very involved for years with many, many community organizations, and I'm passionate about helping people build the skills that are going to make them more successful, both professionally and personally. Some of you may know me through the Chamber. I had helped to start an offshoot of the Chamber, which was a chapter of Toastmasters, and I'll tell you just a little bit about that in a moment. But we started an AGLCC Toastmasters group, and we've since changed the name to Austin Pride Toastmasters, and we are the only LGBTQ Toastmasters club of its kind in Central and South Texas. So I'm very proud of the group, and we're always open to bringing more people into our meetings and helping them build their communication and leadership skills. So as some of you may know, Toastmasters has been around for over 100 years, and this organization has been focusing on helping people to specifically build the skills of public speaking, but also in building confidence and ensuring that people build their ability to lead and get people to better follow where they want them to go. We are all leaders, whether you consider yourself a professional leader or not. Everybody at times needs the skills of being able to persuade people in your direction. And that's what we teach people how to do with confidence, with fun. We give lots of great feedback that's very supportive and constructive. And I encourage everyone out there to consider joining us at Toastmasters. All guests are free, it doesn't cost anything, and even the cost of the program is generally no more than $10 a month. So it's a very simple and very cost-effective program. And today we're going to be focusing on a specific topic, and that is what's been really in the news for many of us, which is in communicating today, we aren't allowed to communicate in person because of the COVID situation and because of this coronavirus challenge. We don't know how long it's going to be lasting. And for many of us, we are now meeting more online, being able to communicate more effectively, but not necessarily in person. So I give a presentation on how to be more effective at communicating online. So I will stop for just a moment and share my screen with you on this particular program that I've created, which is specifically how to build a profound presence in online meetings. Now, I want to encourage everybody here to ask lots of questions throughout. Now, you can either ask a question by unmuting yourself and asking directly, or better yet, go to the chat room, and there's a little chat area down at the bottom, and chat to me your question. And what I'd like to encourage is, if it's relevant about the topic we're talking about at this very moment, because we will be covering 5 different areas, and if it's relevant to what's on the agenda that we're talking about, we want to ask and address that question immediately. Other questions will be addressed later in the presentation, and Stephanie here, who will be assisting us, she's going to be helping out with the questions and interrupting me when we have questions from you guys. So feel free to ask lots of questions as you go. So in dealing with being online, there's a lot of communication basics that are different, as many of us know. When you're communicating in person, you get a lot of connection with people. Not only do you have the vocal communication where you hear the words and you can choose how you're going to say those words, but how you look saying those words has the most powerful connection and ability to influence how people interpret your message. So online, we're a bit more limited because online it's harder to have a connection with people. Like one of the things that gives us connection as human beings is eye contact. We think to look people, well, not directly in the eye, because for some people that can be aggressive, but you want to look at people in a soft way about right here when you're talking to them so that they believe you're giving them complete communication connection. So you want to give them total eye contact. And the best way to do that is keep in mind you want to be looking at them not into their eyes, but in a general way right here. Like I might ask you guys, have you ever stood so close to somebody when you're talking to them that you're not sure which eye to stare at, so you're going back and forth and your eyes are darting back and forth? You may have seen that with other people. It's distracting. And one of the things we want to do is to connect, and so you want to focus about right here, but when you're online, you're not actually looking at people in the eye. you're actually looking at people through the camera. And so you have to know where your camera lens is. My camera lens is at the top center right here. So I can see where my camera lens, so if I want to give complete eye contact, I am only going to look right there. And so I want to focus on that. So as you can see, there's a lot of differences when communicating virtually, and you want to have an impact with people that's going to be effective, and you want to be able to connect with people in a way that's positive and that you're going to be able to be successful in getting your point across. So what we're going to do is start off with this world of the virtual communication, this online communication, by starting with the hardware, the tools you will use to get online. This is the first step to be considering when you want to make sure you're going to be successful. One thing to do is think about, well, will you be on the call with your laptop? Will you be on the call with your tablet or perhaps your phone? So how you tend to join the call makes a big difference. Now your laptop and your tablet is probably going to be using the internet connection, the Wi-Fi connection. If you don't have a great Wi-Fi connection, what I might suggest is at the very least have your phone as a backup so that you can be on the call both with where you can access it through your phone, which doesn't need the Wi-Fi necessarily. And so you might have a more guaranteed good connection. But if you have a good Wi-Fi connection, your laptop, your tablet, or even your desktop computer can work well. Now, most desktop computers, though, keep in mind, do not have cameras unless you've got a very recent desktop, and you may have to buy a separate camera. So make sure that you also consider getting a good camera if you need one that's not your phone. And like the camera on my computer here, my laptop, which is only 3.5 years old, perhaps, but it has an older version of the systems. So its computer systems are older, the operating system is older, and thus I'm more limited on my laptop than I would be if I participated on my phone. But on my phone, I'm more limited as to what I can see. So sometimes I might choose to be on my phone because of the great connection, the communication I can use, and the great tools my new iPhone has. That's better than my computer, but my computer has a bigger screen. So I might want to get on with both tools. But there's some caveats I'll suggest to you if you get on with both tools, because if you're hearing through the speakers of your computer and you're hearing through the speakers of your phone, you'll get an echo sound because the timing is different. So you've got to make sure that you don't have the sound on one of them. So no sound coming from or to your computer if you're using your phone just for that, and no sound from your phone or coming to or from your phone if you're using your computer, which is what I'm doing. I've got my little headset into my actual computer and working with you guys through my laptop and not using my phone. Another thing to keep in mind is because you're on camera, generally if people can see you, they can see everything you're doing. So if you go reach for something here, they can see that. It looks distracting. It makes people wonder where you're going, what are you doing? Or when you're on here, I've been teaching before and I've had people on the call who are kind of like this. You know, it kind of looks like you're not very interested. So when you're on the call and you can see yourself, make sure that you're presenting yourself in a way that's attentive. You want to make sure to smile for the camera, because if you look like this all the time, or if you look too serious, people can see that as more of a wall between the two of you. It seems like you're not really connecting as well. A smile is much more connecting. So make sure to smile as much as you can throughout the meeting. You might even have to remind yourself of that. And speaking of microphones, keep in mind your computer may have a microphone, but it will be attached to your computer. So if I was talking through my computer and I stepped further back, like if I was presenting, I might want to step back to about right here, which gives me more space to work with. And I'm using a headset, so I can hear you just as clearly if you were speaking to me. And while I'm speaking to you, my microphone is near my mouth. And that will actually make it easier to hear me. If I had my computer on, where you can only hear me from the headset off and be just using the computer mic, which sounds just fine here. Notice how my head's been cut off, so I want to adjust the picture to make sure you can see me. But if I were to speak and want to show some gestures as well, I might want to step back, but the more that I step back,
the more that it takes away from the quality of the sound. You might hear more of an echo, or you can't hear me as clearly, and I might have to speak louder to be more effective this far away. But if I have the headset on, that's not as much of a problem. So I like using the headset to solve those problems. So keep in mind,
Make sure you've got a good mic system. As you can see here, as I'm putting the mic on, it sounds a little bit different as I'm adjusting. So have a good mic. I also have a little lapel mic that I sometimes use that gives me space to step back where you can still see me, but the sound quality doesn't change as I move around. You can also buy a professional mic or get a headset that has a microphone as well. Those are all great tools that you can use that will improve the quality of your communication. And that's what this is really all about, is to make sure that you're heard as clearly as possible, that you're loud enough as well, and that people can see what you want them to see. Because if I use a lot of gestures like this, you can't see my gestures at all, and my head is being cut off. So I might want to come back to where you can see not only my head, but see the gestures, and I know the box I'm in, so I can tell I can't do a gesture further out, but I can do gestures here, here, here. Now I don't want to come here because notice how much bigger my hands get when I do that. So I want to keep my gestures more around where my body is. So keep that in mind for those of you who talk like this. You don't want to do that when you're on these calls. And when you're listening in on the call, make sure that you've got good sound. Make sure your speakers are working well. And when you get onto the program, like with Zoom, you have a chance to both test your microphone and a way to test your speakers. And that's something that I will generally recommend to everybody, is make sure that you test things out at the very beginning and make sure your hardware is at the best capabilities it can be. Now, I wanted to just check with Stephanie. Is there any questions at this point that people may have about the hardware? And you guys can ask questions as you go through, so feel free. And Stephanie, if you see a question, you can just unmute yourself and ask me that question. And anyone else too? Yeah, Stephanie.
I'm watching as they come in. Zoom is actually having a couple problems today. It's freezing about every 3 to 6 minutes for a few seconds. So I'm letting them know right now that we're recording this. We have all of the data just in case, but other people are having a couple problems too. So so far we don't have any questions.
Great. And if this is cutting off during this particular recording, what I can do is re-record it at a time when there's better bandwidth. Like, who here can probably figure out why the bandwidth is harder at this time, at lunchtime during the week?
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday, and how many people are having their meetings on a Monday at lunchtime?
Right.
So that's one of the problems we have about having this meeting at this particular time, but I can always record this and get a good recording of it and send that to you guys. So don't worry about that. Not a problem, not a problem. I'm always happy to turn this into a presentation I can send to you guys. So happy to do so. So thank you, Stephanie. Now, the second consideration you want to go to after you've thought about the hardware is the software options. And there are lots of different software companies out there who are offering the ability to communicate online. We're doing this one on Zoom, which is one of the most popular ones and has perhaps the widest array of tools that you could use. But this one, like many of these others, are applications, and you have to download the application, and it's best to have that on your computer before you actually try to get into the meeting. I think you can run some of these directly through their online, in a different way, but I would suggest it's better to download these apps if you're planning on using them. And Zoom is one I'm going to recommend to you guys the most. There are others out there like Cisco's WebEx. There's GoToMeeting, which has been around a long time. A more new kid on the block here is Google Meet. Anyone who has Google can use that free of charge. A few of these actually do charge, and you may be even familiar with others that are out there, but I will recommend, number one, choose Zoom and download the app onto your computer and open up your own personal account. You don't have to have an account, but you want to open up a personal account because you want to practice as much as possible to really sharpen the skills, especially the skills that you learned today. And one great way to practice is to get your own account and then call a friend or get a group of friends together and have a Zoom meeting, have a Zoom social, play a game night, whatever, and practice the tools to get really good at using this particular application. It's a great tool that's out there for people, and it's offered for free. Now, some caveats about Zoom. Because it's offered for free, you only get 40 minutes of time on your account at a time. Now, you could do consecutive 40 minutes, then stop a meeting, start another meeting at another 40 minutes. You can do that. Or you can pay for the Pro account, which is $15 more, where they have unlimited meetings, unlimited times of your meetings. And the great thing is that you can also then have an account that you can share with other people if you want to. You can have unlimited numbers of people in your meetings, and you can record these meetings. So there's lots of things you can do that you have a few extra options when you pay for the account that is $15 a month. Once you have an account, you could even share that account, like I said, with a few others, as long as you're not doing 2 meetings at one time. But Cisco, GoToMeeting, even Google Meet are very similar in terms of how they interact with the different people on there and the tools that they have. But I'd say Zoom has more of these tools than most of the others. But the tools are all fairly similar. So we'll go through a few of these. One of the most important tools you want to use is, again, that smile. Because when you're connecting with people and presenting with people, this is not my natural way of presenting. This takes some practice to be able to present where you're smiling a lot. But when people see the teeth, why do you think that's more engaging? It's friendlier, it's warmer, it looks like you care, and it looks like you want things to go well here. It's not like a confrontation. You don't look bored, you don't look upset, you don't look judgy. So you look friendly and warm. That is the most important connection tool you can use in any communication, but especially when you're online, you want to use that tool. So when you get started and you've got the software program loaded down, here's a few things to know about joining your virtual meeting. Always get to your meetings early, about 5 to 10 minutes, because you will want to practice a few things and adjust for your sound. You'll want to adjust where you're going to be standing and how close you'll be standing, what's going to be in your background, whether you want to change that up and have a different type of background or create a virtual background. You want to think about all these things well before your meeting and not playing with these during the meeting. Another thing is you'll want to mute your mic when you're not speaking. The number one reason why you want to do that is because things will happen, such as I've got a phone in the background, and while I'm speaking, if that landline goes off and rings, the only thing I could do to stop that from happening is to mute myself, which I can't do while I'm talking, or I'd have to get to that phone before it rings for 6, 7 times and annoys the heck out of all of y'all. So muting your mic when you're not talking is a very important tool, because you don't want noise to get on. If you're at home, you've got an emergency vehicle going by your house, we can all hear that. You got a dog that starts barking, we can hear that. Baby starts crying, whatever it is, or some child comes up to you and starts asking questions. That can interrupt your presentation, or even when you're not presenting, it can interrupt the presenter. So you want to make sure, have your mic on mute so any noises from the outside don't get in the way of this particular meeting. Another thing here to keep in mind is be aware of your visual presence. Not only just smile, be aware of your background. I had somebody who had people walking around in their office while they were talking, and they were in their office themselves, but they had a glass wall or a glass window behind them, and you could see people walking back and forth, and it looks really distracting when things are going on in the background. Or if you have something very interesting in the background that pulls people's attention away from the speaker, such as, I got these baubles back here, and people are all wondering, what is that? And they're wanting to ask those questions. So try not to have anything too distracting in your visual periphery while you're speaking. Another thing when you're joining the meeting is avoid multitasking while you're in the meeting. Because if you're doing other things, like you're checking emails, you can be doing all sorts of things. Now, you could put your camera, this is something you can cheat on a little bit, you could put your phone right below the camera and be looking at it this way, where it seems as if you're connecting with them, but you actually could be checking your messages. But generally, people can tell if you're multitasking. and it comes across as disrespectful of the meeting, and it looks like you're not giving 100% to the meeting. So if you want to make sure that you're giving 100%, try not to be doing other things. Or if you have to write down, take notes, and say, I'm going to take notes during this, so I'm going to be looking like this in the meeting all the time, but that looks like I'm not paying attention. So you might want to let people know, oh, I'm going to be taking notes from time to time as well. So if you see me looking down, that's what's going to be going on. So that way they know I'm still engaged. There are many other things about when you're joining the virtual meeting, depending on the type of meeting, but the main thing is download the program, make sure you're on that meeting early so that you can work out any sort of glitches that could come up that may be happening. You want to deal with those before the meeting ever starts. And if there's something specific you need to know, such as if you've got an agenda, you might want to read through this beforehand, or any assignments that you need to be prepared for, make sure to do that as well. So any questions at this point, Stephanie? So I'll just kind of check to see if you guys have any questions, but like I said, we'll keep going if there are none.
We don't have anything yet. I'll let you know.
Great, thanks. And there's a little, on the program, there's a little place in the program where you can raise your hand. So if you have a question, that's another way to do it, is to raise your hand. So I'll also look to see if Stephanie does anything like that, but you could actually leave your phone off mute and interrupt me at any point, Stephanie. And I'll assume if you're not interrupting me, there's not a question.
Right.
Thanks. We're new at working together, so we're figuring this all out. So meeting enhancers. This is how to make your meetings more effective. So one of the most important things is, again, open up that Zoom account early and practice with the tools. And we'll go over these tools in a bit. An important one here too is to store the ID or the link for the meeting somewhere where you can easily get to it. Like one place I almost always put it is in my on my calendar, so that like just before the meeting, Stephanie had called me. I said, yes, I'm going to be coming on to the meeting. We got off the phone. I went to my calendar, and the only thing that was on my calendar about this meeting was the link to registering. And so eventually I finally decided, well, I'll see if I can find, I'll just register myself, and then we'll send me the link. And the moment I registered myself, it said, oh, you can go ahead and join the meeting now. And so that was perfect. But have that link readily available. And it can be two things. It can be the URL, which is the internet link where you just go through the internet, or you could just know the meeting ID number. And so you could just sometimes I use a specific number every time I have my personal meetings, and people always know that number. I know that number, and then I can go ahead and use that to get onto the meeting. I can just say, go to Zoom and it says, what's the meeting ID? Well, I know it, it's this number. So if you know the number, you can just type that in and it comes right up. Sometimes also to get into the meeting, they may ask for a password. So if you know you'll need a password, or if they put you in a waiting room where you're going to have to wait until they let you into the meeting, these are good things to know at the beginning. Another thing is, again, make sure you've got good video and microphone. Always test them before the meeting starts. You also want to adjust for great lighting. I had a meeting that started this morning at 7 o'clock, and generally I have natural lighting coming in from these windows all the way around. But the problem is, at that time of the morning, there's not enough light. And so everything behind me is very, very dark. And I put a light on in front of me, but that's just from the front. If it was on this side, it would make a shadow on this side. So I would want to have a light here and a light here coming from this angle, but not directly at me. So these are some things that can be helpful. So make sure you've got good lighting. So you might want to check out your lamps and things and play with this beforehand, and play with where your background's going to be. Maybe you need to put a sheet up behind you so that you can hide whatever is there, or make sure that there's nothing that's really distracting in that background. Again, as I'd mentioned, you might use your smartphone as a backup to always make sure that when there's a problem with the connection, you've got some extra backup there.
Hey, Bart, we have a couple questions.
Yes, go ahead, Stephanie.
Do you have any specific third-party microphones and video cameras that you would recommend?
Generally, what you can do is, because this is really popular right now, you can go online and find out for 2020 what is the most recommended equipment that you can get. Now, the recommendations I can make don't mean that you can actually get them, because a lot of the recommendations, these products are made not here in this country, and if they're made in places like China. I've been waiting on a headset now since I ordered it in late March. So where are we now? It's 6 weeks later. I still don't have it, although I paid for it. So generally, you know, there's some really great products that are out there, and I would just say look online as to what products are most recommended. But I would say most any product is probably going to be a good one. You know, if you're paying for a camera, it's probably going to be anywhere from $40 to $80. You don't need one that's $150 to have a good camera these days. And as far as microphones, almost any sort of microphone is probably going to be good. I love having the wired microphone, because with the wired microphone, one of the great things about it is that you almost can't go wrong with it versus the cordless ones, which require Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Those can go wrong. So that's one of the problems. So I like having a wired one. The only problem with having a wired one is you can't travel too far. But the good thing is, in this environment, how far away can you be before you're too far away from your people anyways? I would never probably come more farther away than about right here if I were speaking. But here I might want to make sure to have a little lapel mic, which is one, I did buy a little lapel mic. It was cheap, $5, $6, didn't cost a whole lot. These microphones don't cost much. This came with my phone. So you don't have to use a lot. This is a little bit distracting for some people, but then again, I find the headset too a little bit weird when people have it on. So everyone's different about how they want to present themselves in front of people, but I don't recommend one particular product over another. But I would recommend thinking about the products. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of in the same vein, they were wanting to know the same thing with lighting. Do you have any specific recommendations?
Actually, no, there are some great lightings that are out there. Usually I would say you find natural lights is probably going to be your best thing. There's a lot of LEDs that are out there now that produce a lot of great natural light, but you want to make sure the room you're going to be presenting in has light that's coming from in front of you. So in this area here in front, coming at your face, generally a light from this side to this side better, but you don't want to have it too bright. Just even notice as I put my hands up in front of the windows, it darkens my face a little bit. So you want to have the right amount of lighting, which this natural lighting works just perfect. But if I've got light coming in from a window in the background, that could create a problem with a silhouette behind me. But keep in mind, what people see, what you see is what they're going to see. So like Stephanie, when I see you, you've got the light behind you, but you've also got the shades in front of it so that it's not overwhelming you. Whereas if you didn't have that on there, I would probably say don't do that, because it's going to probably create unnecessary shadow on your face.
Right.
So, but play with lighting is what I'll suggest. Just play with the lighting you've got. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy special lighting. But they do have some clip-on lamps now, because so many people are doing this these days, and have a clip-on lamp. Now, there's something I'm doing that you guys may not be aware of. I've put my computer up on top of a little table so that I'm standing, and yet I want to keep my eyes almost at the level of my camera. You don't want to have you don't want to be down here, because then notice how the angle looks unusual. Or if I were to come up here and what the angle's like there. So you want to make sure that if you can have the camera as straight on as possible, and then decide what the lighting needs to be and how high up that you're, like my phone here, I have this little tripod. And so I can make it higher, I can make it lower, I can turn it, I can do some things there. The only thing I can do with my computer is I can put it up on pillows or on this little table, but play with those ideas, because anything that will enhance how you look is going to make you more effective when you're working with people.
Okay, and then we have one from Richard. What about green screens? I see a lot of folks using virtual backgrounds, but they don't look good because the hair seems to blend in. Do you think a green screen would solve this issue?
Well, the better your computer software is, the better you're going to be having be able to work with those virtual backgrounds. But no matter what, they're not perfect. They generally only can identify the body. So if I were to demonstrate something and I said, okay, let me show you how this works, and I start bringing things into the picture, the computer can't tell what that is. And so if you've got a virtual background, it's not going to be very effective. The green screen, on the other hand, will identify, and the reason why they call it a green screen is because generally green is not a color of the skin or the hair or anything that the camera would normally think is you. So if you have a green background, you can put almost anything onto that back screen, any sort of setting and such, and then it's less likely to have the problem of trying to find where you are and where you stop. But it's not a perfect science just yet. It's getting better and better, I will suggest that. But you can actually have a blue screen, a black screen. It's just the colors, like my hair is really dark, so if I had a brown screen or a black screen, my hair could disappear into it, and I would just, my whole face would just stop right here, and that would look weird. If you're wearing glasses and you turn your head and you can now see through the lens right here, that part of your face will disappear, or those glasses will disappear right there, and it will look weird until you turn back full face to the camera. So if you have glasses, you've got to be careful about those virtual backgrounds as well. Don't move too quickly when you have virtual backgrounds, because again, the camera's trying to decide which is your body, where's your body, and where are your hands. So I could be talking to you and suddenly my hand or part of my hand just disappears if I'm using a virtual background. So I'm not a great fan of virtual backgrounds because it can be a little bit distracting. And then again, I had someone who had a virtual background this morning of them being in a lovely room, and it's like the window was open and the wind was blowing the curtains, and I was looking at that and I'm going, wow, I wonder where she is, because I'm looking outside and I don't see any wind at all. It looks pretty windy there. And then I realized, oh, it's a virtual screen. So you have to practice with these things. Coming too far forward or back with your virtual screen will mess it up as well. So if you decide where you're going to be, don't step back or come forward when you're doing a virtual screen, because then it has a harder time figuring things out. It's okay if you're in this dimension, but once you start coming forward, that's going to create a problem too. So lots of challenges with the virtual backgrounds, but they can also be fun because you can take any picture that you've got and put it in your background. One other caveat, I have an older laptop. The older laptops cannot do virtual backgrounds. They can do green screens, but they cannot do virtual backgrounds. And so that's frustrating because there's some really cool virtual backgrounds I love to use for different purposes. Although I can use it with my phone, because my iPhone is iPhone 11. It's fairly new, so I can play with it if I have the meeting with you on my phone. So, but it won't work with my laptop because I don't have a recent laptop. It has to be a higher grade operating system to work that way, because it's newer software and it takes a lot of space and such, so it doesn't work quite as well. Other questions, Stephanie?
That's it. Thank you very much. Richard says, makes sense. Thank you. He didn't even think about the glasses. I know that we've been telling our members, like we use the branded Zoom for our bigger meetings like that are with the city. Mm-hmm. But we also have found it to be kind of nice to see people in their own elements during this time. Like that being real doesn't hurt, you know?
It actually creates a better connection. So that's very, very true. And so one of the great things is you want to make sure you come across as real, authentic. Sometimes those artificial backgrounds are a little bit odd. So definitely, because I'm looking at myself where the natural lighting is, and I might even normally change my lighting just a little bit because I look a little yellowish with the way the light's hitting in the room, and I might want to be more natural colored. But in general, though, the lighting is about right, and this is all natural lighting. I have no lighting on that's artificial. This is just natural. So, but what I've done is I've positioned my camera so that it's behind the windows, and these other windows are so far away that it doesn't interfere too much. But that can be a big problem if you've got a lot of light behind you in any way. So that's why you want to adjust your camera to where you're going to be, where the lighting is just right as well.
Got it.
Great questions, everyone. So, and lastly here about things that will enhance your meeting is use a wired mic. I've already talked about that and why that can help. But one of the things that you may have been in meetings before and you can hear people typing. Like I was at a Toastmasters conference, or not a conference, but a Toastmasters contest. And at the contest, one of the speakers was speaking, and the only person who was unmuted was the Toastmaster, because she's going to talk after the speaker is finished. But you could hear her typing. It was very light, but I could hear this typing going on. And it was like, she needs to mute herself. So that's something to keep in mind. Don't have any extraneous noise. But when I have this headset like this, or headset here, or this wired mic, if I was typing, you would be less likely to hear it because the microphone is really close to my mouth and far away from where the computer is. So that would help to reduce the chance of getting this extraneous noise in when you're wearing these type of equipment. That's why I would recommend that. Now, some of the online tools, we're going to go through the tools that are on here, and there's some really great tools that come with Zoom that are on many of these others as well. Number one is the mute button. Get to know the mute button, make the mute button your friend. Because you want to be able to, if you were talking, or let's just say if I wasn't talking, but I didn't have it on mute, and suddenly something comes around the room that's making a lot of noise, like my dog starts barking or something like that, you got to quickly mute yourself. Now, one of the good things is if you're the host or the co-host, you can mute other people and unmute them so that they don't have to be the only ones to do it. So how I can tell is if I put it on, and I'll talk to you about this in a moment, speaker view, the main picture that I'm going to see in this meeting will be the primary speaker. If the primary speaker pauses and some other noise is going on with someone else, their computer screen will now come up as the primary speaker. That's some of the ways you can know where's this noise coming from. Because if you put it on the speaker view, you can see that. Plus, you may see out of all the little frames you can look at, my frame is highlighted in yellow, which means I'm the one who's creating the noise right now. If Stephanie speaks up, suddenly her window will light up in yellow. And so
hello.
You see that? So you can tell where the noise is coming from if everybody stops and yet there's still noise going on. Like if somebody has their phone on and their computer on with both the sound, suddenly you'll start hearing this echoing. I actually had to give a speech once, and I had my ears in with my phone, so I was using my phone, and I had the computer on so I could watch what's going on in the room on the bigger screen, but I also had the sound coming from my computer as well as from my phone, which was going in my ear. So I heard myself speaking in my ear, and I heard myself speaking from the computer, and it was an echo, echo, echo. So, Stephanie. You know, it's like, oh my God, and I'm giving a speech, and I'm hearing this. It was horrible. It was the worst experience I've ever had. And I didn't realize, oh, it's because of the sound, but I couldn't do anything at that moment because I was speaking. So know where that mute button is and use it quickly. Another thing, know your video cam options. Turn your video off if you're doing anything that could be distracting, such as if you had to, let's say you had to sneeze, and you go, sneeze really loud or something like that. You may not want people to hear it, so you might want to mute yourself, but also you might want to turn your video camera off. And so there's a stop video. When I turn my camera off, you no longer can see me. Or if I put my picture, like I can put a little photograph in there and you can see the photograph, but you don't see me. If I don't have the photograph, you'll just see my name up there. But that's one thing you can do is you can stop your video. And now I got to be able to start it again. Let's see, there we go. So I think you can see me now. And so, no, actually I don't see me now. Let me see, oh, there we go. Okay, now I can see me. So another thing here about the video cam is not only does it have the on off, but there's a little arrow where you can see the other menus, such as adjusting for your virtual backgrounds. You can turn your virtual background on, you can turn it off, you can change what the background is. And I think you have, like my computer has an option of, or my phone has an option of 3 backgrounds at any one time. You can't store more than a few of them in there. And sometimes I need more of them, so it doesn't always work quite so well for me. Another thing about the video cam is mirroring. So if I were to hold up a sign and I wanted you to read something, and I said, you know, this is your trusted resource. If you can read this, you can read backwards in a mirror. I might want to change this for the mirror setting so that it turns me around the other direction so you could actually read what I'm showing. So that's what mirroring is all about. So if you have anything that people need to actually see that you're going to hold up, a sign, or I'm writing on a board here, it's going to look backwards to you guys if I don't mirror it. Some other options, there's a lot of options on here for learning about settings, and that's a whole seminar in itself. And one of the great things to know about Zoom is they have videos for everything you could possibly ever want to know. So if you're working with something and you want to know how to do that on Zoom, you just put that into a search, and the search engine will probably find a YouTube video or put you to Zoom itself directly, and you can watch these little videos that can teach you how to do everything you ever need to know. So whether it's about virtual backgrounds, it's about how to play with your video cam, how your mute button works, all these different setting options and what they mean. Lots of great things to learn about that you can play with during this COVID time if you have time on your hands. Not everybody does, but if you do. And another good thing too is sometimes you want to see everybody in the meeting. So you could go to something called gallery view if I wasn't sharing the screen. Right now I'm sharing the screen with what's on my computer, this PowerPoint program, and you can probably see a film strip of a few people. So if people have their video cams on where you could see them, or like Stephanie, she's got the chamber background on there so that when she's not on there, when she turns her camera off, it's just the chamber on there. You can see her, and if she turns the cam off, you see what she's put there in there for whatever you want to set in there as what people can see.
Hey Bart, this is actually set up as a webinar and not a meeting, so they won't be able to see the little icons of themselves.
Okay.
So there's when you're doing a meeting, everybody has a camera. When you're doing a webinar, only the host has a camera. So that's something I just learned the hard way. I tried to do a meeting with 45 people and I set it as a webinar and we had to do it. It was a nice mess. So that's good to know.
That's a good point, Stephanie, because one of the things I heard this morning from a Toastmaster member who hadn't been to several of our meetings, I asked him, well, we'd love to have you come to the next meeting. He says, I don't like going to these online meetings because I don't really feel like I connect with people. Well, it's really hard to connect if you can't even see them. That's why, despite the fact that you say, well, I don't want people seeing my messy room, or maybe I don't want to have to, I got to fix my hair, I got to look nice, I got to actually wear pants. Well, you guys can't tell, but I am wearing pants. So I'm not wearing shoes, but I am wearing pants. And the whole point is that you don't have to necessarily do these things, but the more you can see of people, the more they feel connected. And that's really the most important aspect to any communication is, do people feel connected to you? The moment they don't feel connected, the less likely they are to even pay attention to what you're saying. So you definitely want people to embrace what you're having to say and being able to see you and see the emotions and how you're expressing yourself. Or even if Stephanie's the one who's just listening, I can see Stephanie, I can see me. And if she's just listening, she might want to just be looking like this. A few reactions, but essentially she's listening, she's watching, she cares. When she has her camera off, I have no idea what she's doing. She could be off making a sandwich somewhere. Yeah, exactly. Could be doing anything. Now, keep in mind, if you're going to do anything, you'll like, because I'm always playing with my face, I'm always, wiping my brow or something. You don't want to do that with people seeing you. So if you have to stop your camera for just a moment, do that. So you stop your camera and then come right back. Don't stay.
Also, right now, we're in a pretty different scenario. Most of us didn't choose to work from home or to homeschool our kids. So it's really important that we give ourselves that grace. I have 2 kids who are going to school right now. So if my face disappears and my logo pops up, probably I need to help somebody or do something. So give yourselves lots of grace. Like, we can look good and professional online and still be human very easily. I prefer the meetings. I love seeing the faces. And I always tell everyone, like, do a meeting every time unless you have a screen to share. There's no reason not to.
You all may be familiar with that. There was an expert who was talking, I think, about the economy or something, and he was in his office, and his office door was open, and suddenly his 3-year-old child comes marching into the room, and then the baby starts to crawl in the room. Then the governess comes in and grabs both kids and pulls them out of the room, and they're all making this noise, and it's very distracting, but it was so funny and it was so cute, and it just really warms you up to that person. You feel more connected to them. I'll say, oh, they're a real person. They're not just this head that you see on TV. So it's really a great thing in many ways. And one of the wonderful things about this is that there are a lot of people who are what you may have heard of before called Luddites. Luddites are people who, originally the term comes from 1812 in England, when people were really upset about the Industrial Revolution because these machines and technology were going to take away all our jobs. Once they had sewing machines, you won't need seamstresses anymore. Once they have machines, you won't need people. Well, that may be true, but Luddites thought because they felt threatened and didn't like technology, you have to destroy technology. I will not accept it. We must destroy it. And so they tried destroying technology. Now, that didn't stop technology, but there are a lot of people even today who would say, look, I'm not going to commute from home. And now they've been forced to commute from home and learn how to do it. And then realize, oh, well, this actually works pretty well. You just have to, but it is a very different way of communicating and adjusting your life. But it's the reality we all share. And that means that after this situation goes away and we get back to normal life again, it never will be the same.
Right.
Well, one of the great things is a lot of people are learning about how to communicate more effectively online. And that's going to change everything, including how many of you actually don't like the video phones, where you actually, when you talk to people on your phone, you actually can see them too. And some people are like, I don't do that. And in the future, that may change, and people may have no problem doing that in the future, because now we're getting used to it. It's become our life. So, and it's our future. So, but when you are not in a webinar and you are actually in a meeting, you can choose between seeing the gallery, which can have up to as many as 25 people in a meeting in one picture, little windows, but you can see everybody, anyone who actually has their camera on. And then, but if you have more than 25 people, you're going to have a second window of more people. So you're only going to see 25 at most, and there's fewer people, you'll see fewer windows, but it's very Brady Bunch. So if you remember the Brady Bunch, how everybody had their own little window, it's kind of like that. So although you can't really wave down to somebody in the window below you, you have to remember it's on the camera. So little things to think about. I like having it on speaker view if you want to make sure you see the speaker as your primary view. And when you have it on speaker view, you do get to see up to 4 people, I think, on a strip, a film strip. And you can move through the film strip, but obviously if you have 50 people in the meeting, that's a lot of people to move through. But generally in the film strip you see, it's going to be the last people who've spoken. And I think the film strip may also include you in it. And you can also ask it not to do that. Now, don't put me in there. I want to see just the last 4 people who've spoken. So that's something you can do that's really a fun thing to play with and learn more about. Another thing here to keep in mind is other things you can do is you can pin a window. Let's say, for instance, Stephanie is going to be my timer, and I want to make sure if she's going to signal me, I want to see her. So, and if I've got 50 people on the call, which of the 50 people is she going to be? But if I pin her window, she's going to be one of the primary people I always see. So that's something that can be helpful, is to pin one person there so that you're always watching them no matter who else is there. The chat feature, another great thing to use. It's a great way to communicate with people without interrupting the rest of the meeting. You've probably been in meetings before where people are talking to each other and they're bothering you because they're talking to each other in the meeting. Well, they can't do that on here without bothering everybody, but you can chat with people. Keep in mind though, if you chat with them, you can chat to everybody, or you can chat to a very specific person in private. There's not a whole lot of other options, but make sure that if you're going to be chatting to someone in private, like if I'm sending a private message to Stephanie, that it doesn't go out to everyone. So make certain that you know who it's going to. And generally you can click on their name and then it'll show you, it'll be that person that you're chatting with, or you have to go through the chat list and find the person, click on their name, and then that'll be the person you're chatting to. In the chat window, you can also attach documents and say, hey, I'm going to attach this document for you guys to pull up. And so they could pull it up during the meeting, or you can put in a link to something so that people can see something without having to actually share the window, which is what I'm doing right now. You can actually signal people. There's a little thing where you can raise your hand. And then I think it's the host only who can bring the hand back down. But as long as the hand's raised, it means somebody's got a question or they want to say something. So, but it's a way of doing it without having to interrupt the speaker. Now, it's also helpful, though, if you're going to be in these meetings and you're the one speaking and running the meeting, try to have somebody who can assist you with keeping an eye on the other windows, because you can get really busy. And if you've got people in a waiting room waiting to come into the meeting and you've already started talking, you're probably not going to think about them. So make sure you've got somebody who is a Zoom master who can keep an eye on things and make sure the meeting is running well while the person running the meeting can focus on doing that. So I generally recommend having 2 people. Plus, in the end, the Zoom master can suggest what people could do to improve in the meeting as well, so that we have better meetings. Another thing here is you might want to invite some people to a meeting. So if you're wondering, well, so-and-so's supposed to be here at the meeting and I don't see them on here, instead you could text them on your phone, but you can also go to invite and send an invite by email, or if they're already on a pre-created list that you created of all the people who should be in the meeting, you can text them with the meeting link. Because how many of you have ever been trying to get into a meeting but you can't find the link? And it's just driving you crazy. Like when I was starting this meeting, it's like, I got to find the link. I thought I had it and I don't see it anywhere. So I didn't have the link or the room ID, so I couldn't get into the meeting. So these are just little things that can make things run more smoothly that are part of the tools that you've got. And then the one I want you to spend the most time with is the share screen, where you can share your screen so that when you go on to share a screen, it's going to put up there options for you to look at what you're going to share. But if people can see everything on your computer, then that means that whatever is on your computer right now, they can see. So make sure you don't have anything on your computer you don't want people to see. So that's something to think about. Like, I take down a lot of documents that I don't need to have for my meeting, because once I go to the share screen, it's going to list every document that I got to open on my computer, and then I've got to look through it to find the one I want to share. And so I close out documents that I don't need. And another thing too is that they've got a great tool on there called a whiteboard, which is like a dry erase board. You can draw figures on there, you can write on there, you can draw text in there, and basically you can be having a meeting with people and taking notes on the whiteboard. But everyone can see it. So you can draw a figure of something, like you're trying to explain something to someone, or insert a picture of something while you're trying to show what you're trying to do or what you mean. It's a great way to share visuals. The only problem with it is it then takes away from me being able to see other people in the meeting. It limits what you can see. So I might recommend only use it when you need to, and then when you're done, stop sharing. So I know that's a lot, and I'm going to stop sharing here and see what other questions you guys may have. But as you notice here, you've got all these different tools that you can play with. And the best thing I'm going to recommend is practice, practice, practice. Get an account, even a free account, and then bring someone in and say, hey, Stephanie, do you have a little bit of time? I wanted to have a meeting with you. Let's do it on Zoom. And then you can play on Zoom. You can practice with the sharing of screens. If Stephanie wanted to say, look, I'm having trouble finding this on your homepage. Well, show me what you're looking at. Share your screen with me, and she can show me exactly what she's trying to do, and I can walk her through it, seeing what she's doing. Or if I wanted her to walk her through what I'm showing her, I can show her my screen. So I love the share screen feature. So the only thing to keep in mind is that Zoom and other programs are changing because the technology has gotten so popular. There have been some problems that have come up that we've never thought of before. Like, there is something called Zoom bombing, where someone gets access to coming into a meeting who may not belong in that meeting. Could even be a salesperson who is trying to sell their product. They get into a meeting somehow and then put links onto the chat or show things that might be inappropriate. Like you put something on there that everybody can see on the screen. They take over the share screen. So now Zoom is limiting, or has the ability to limit, who has access to sharing the screen. Everyone in the meeting cannot just do it. If I was the host, I can actually block it and say only the host and co-host can share their screen. No one else can do it. I might put a recommendation or a requirement that people, if they come to the meeting, they must know the password. And that's something that I think Zoom is doing for all meetings starting at the end of May, that all meetings are now going to require that. Another thing that can protect the room is having a waiting room where people can't come into your meeting until you let them in. The problem with that, though, is once the meeting starts, if people are waiting in the waiting room, you've got to check that and bring them into the meeting. So that's the only problem with that one. But it does keep unwanted people out. And if you've got people in your meeting who's being disruptive, they now have tools where the host and the co-host can throw someone out of the meeting. You can either do it temporarily, or you can just chat with them, but you block them from participating in a meeting, or you can kick them out of the meeting entirely, and you could block them for life. So there's options you can have where people can't get into there. So those are just a few things that are helpful. Other things I'll recommend is, if you'll notice in a meeting, you have your box, and in your box there's this little thing, an ellipses, a dot, 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 and you can go to your ellipses and you've got lots of choices here. And some of my choices are mute my audio, so I could do it that way, or I can go to the button down at the on lower left of my screen and mute my button. You also unmute it the other way. There's also and depending on whether you have a Mac or a laptop, other types, you can use these shortcuts to do it as well, like push two keys and mute or unmute. You can record or unrecord, or stop recording at that point, or you can pause the recording and start the recording back. Other things I've got here as options is I can pin my video, which you guys know. You can spotlight a particular video that's being seen. You can rename yourself, and I love doing that in my Toastmasters meetings, because if let's say if I'm the vote counter and I want everyone to know I'm the vote counter, so I'll put vote counter -Bart instead of having Bart Loser there. That way it's more helpful to know who I am. Or if I have a title, like I'm an area director, you may want to know that I'm an area director for Toastmasters. So I might say Area Director or AD Bart Loser. And then everyone in the meeting knows who I am. So there's little things you can do that can add to it. You can change your name and make it whatever you want. Plus, if you sign on to someone else's account, like when Stephanie first signed on, it said Tina Cannon. And it's like, well, I know that's not Tina, but she's on Tina's account. So, and that's what name will come up as who's on the account. Or if you registered under somebody's name, that's the name that's going to show up. So these are things to know. But you can change them once you get into the meeting. So I just want to check as we're just about done here to see if anybody has any other questions. I know that's a lot of information.
We have nothing else. Everyone seems nothing but good replies. We're super glad that everybody got to join us today. I went ahead and threw a link in there for you guys. It's canva.com, which is a graphic design platform, but it's free. And I am telling it to every single client we have because like it's important that we look good, but right now it's also important that our graphics, our screen shares, our anything we're doing online matches the professionalism that Bart is teaching us today. So we need to, really work on those things. So I went ahead and just threw a free resource on the chat feature. Oh. And then Bart will be getting us a video of this to send to everybody as well, and even the people who didn't make it today.
Thank you for that, Stephanie. And I do recommend you guys use Canva or other types of great programs that are out there that can help you create a great online presence. One other thing I will recommend is the more you practice this, the better you get. And I will suggest joining a Toastmasters group, even as a guest, and seeing how do people present? What are they doing? What's working? What's not working? You learn a lot through Toastmasters, and it costs very little to get involved, just your time. And it's one of the most powerful courses that's not only going to make you a more powerful communicator, but a better leader, more confident, and more impactful in the way you communicate in every day, personally and professionally. So please do consider joining us at Toastmasters as well. Do
you mind sending me a link for people who want to join Toastmasters so that we can send them an email and then also post it on our social media today?
That is perfect. I will get that to you. You can also do a search for Austin Pride Toastmasters. Mm-hmm. And Toastmasters.org is the international organization, and they've got incredible resources for learning to be a better communicator. I strongly recommend that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I'll get this recording out to you guys.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And thank you again, Bart. We have had an amazing time learning about this. If you have any questions, you can email Bart directly. Bart, will you give us your email address?
Yes, if you think of Toastmaster, which is TM Bart Loser, and my name, BartLoeser, TM bartloser@gmail.com.
Perfect. And we are at www.austinlgbtchamber.com. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.